Oops, sorry about that. My camera fucked up for a second. Howdy, welcome back. Let me post about some stuff about the stream real quick. Cool. Got some things to do, like copying the link. Nice. Very good. Post. Post that too. Nice. Launch the game. Thank you. Huh? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Typing. That's the sounds that Opera browser makes. I really like it. The little key clacking sounds. What the fuck? Huh? Yes, okay. Done posting things. Oh boy. Nice. Wingfi. Perfect. Okay, wait. Let me see what the news is saying about this earthquake in New York. Very strange things happening, apparently. Is there any news about this? Apparently not. I mean, obviously the US Geological Survey has some stuff about it because they track earthquakes and whatever. Let's go to USA Today, I guess? Sure, since that's the first thing that came up. Hey, Theo, Boy, Maverick. I recognize those guys. They're cool. 4.8 magnitude earthquake recorded in New Jersey shook residents in surrounding states and New York City on Friday morning. Temblor was reported about 5 miles north of White House Station, New Jersey at about 10:23 a.m., according to the U.S. Geological Survey. The epicenter was about 45 miles away from New York City, where residents reported shaking furniture and floors. No major disruptions or damage have been reported in New Jersey or New York. That's actually really good news, and kind of surprising, honestly. We've activated our state emergency operations center. Please do not call 911 unless you have an actual emergency, said the governor of New Jersey. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I guess that's all I need to know from the, like, straight-up news perspective. It sounds like, you know, there might have been some minor damages and stuff, but nobody was seriously hurt, and that's good. Again, that's kind of surprising because earthquakes don't usually happen on the East Coast. You know, the U.S. East Coast is not the site of any really active fault lines. and stuff like that. You get one every once in a blue moon, but, you know, as a result of them being so infrequent, stuff on the East Coast isn't really built to withstand earthquakes. Although I guess the infrastructure that we did have in this instance was good enough. You know, I feel like that it could have been worse. But I'm just glad that people didn't like get hurt or something. You know, that's pretty all right. I actually, believe it or not, I actually heard it. I physically heard the earthquake happening from my house. In fact, it was kind of similar to another experience I had in college where there was an earthquake in the town where I went to college. Very small earthquake. It was magnitude like 2 or 3. Basically, it sound, you know, in the one in college, it sounded like it almost sounded like a truck had crashed into something, you know, just like a really loud bang sound. This one sounded like a thunderclap, you know, like a boom of thunder. And I was like, man, what was that? You know, there's no clouds in the sky. And then shortly after, I just unrelated, I open up social media and stuff. And, you know, apparently people were saying, like, yeah, you know, an earthquake just happened in New York City, of all places. So, you know, I guess that's what that was. So that's actually also an interesting tip for you guys. If you ever hear thunder when it is clear as day and it's, you know, clearly not raining outside, it's possible that it's an earthquake, you know, a small earthquake. Or maybe a big earthquake, depending on where you live. It could be a bigger earthquake as well, but yeah. Very interesting things happening. Mirror mode gets me, man. As in, like, I get caught flat-footed by mirror mode pretty frequently. Player, I'm not going to throw any of this at you because you are currently my only blue shell protection. Like I was saying. I'm not nearly as used to this track on mirror mode as I am on 150. Take it as I can. Alright. That's all well and good. I'm getting red shelled. Might be getting Mario Kart. Okay, I'm not, thankfully. Oh, dude. God Gamer? Using a cart? Let's go. Ah, sorry, I had to... Oh! Never mind, the shock saved them. Give me an item. The best item in the game! God damn it. And I get 5th. Middle spot. Okay. Oh. Oh yes, and then there's one other news item that I want to cover before getting to the debate review, and then depending on whether or not a certain chatter shows up, I might cover something else. News out of Thailand. Some good news, actually. Thailand promptly passes same-sex marriage bill. Groundbreaking legislation would secure equal rights for LGBT people. This is from Human Rights Watch. The Thai Parliament's upper house should promptly pass a same-sex marriage bill that the lower house approved by an overwhelming majority on March 27th, 2024. And when they say overwhelming, they mean it. I think the vote was like 400 and something to like 10. You know, it was a pretty big margin. Yeah, look, Thailand's House of Representatives passed the Marriage Equality Act with the approval of 400 out of the 415 members present. 10 voted against the bill, 2 abstained, and 3 did not vote. Very cool. And if anything, I think this is yeah, it amends some of the language around how marriage works to say, like, yeah, you know, obviously men could be married, women and women could be married. I think this indicates a significant rise in social progressivism in Thailand, but also, you know, potentially if other countries follow suit in the global south, which is great because you know, especially when bills like this pass with such an overwhelming majority, it means that there's a very widespread and very passive acceptance that, like, yeah, this is pretty normal and stuff like that. Oh, shit. Ow. Okay, whew. I actually shouldn't have slowed down there, I think. That boost panel actually helped me out. That was one of those set speed boost panels where no matter what, you go 100 kilometers an hour. Really helpful. Ow. Please don't hit me. Okay, he didn't. Ah, Mega Mushroom. I know where I want to use this, and it's coming up. Right here. No! Oh my god, that's so unlucky. I got a bad bounce. I think I would have made it if not for the bad bounce. Alright. Keep going. So it seems like, you know, going back to that news about the legalization of gay marriage in Thailand, it seems like at the same time that the West is experiencing a rise in social reactionism and a, you know, very dangerous dance with the far right, you know, there are some countries in the global south that are becoming more progressive steadily, and that's great, I think. What happened there? One mushroom. Okay, okay, okay. Best item in the game. Alright. No more falling off shenanigans this time. Thanks, mate. Oh, man. Okay. Kind of want to get rid of these green shells. A little bit. Just a little bit. Okay, okay, okay. Get rid of that. Oh, that was such a good point to slow down. Oh, second place. The first lap and a half was very sloppy, but I picked up my, cleaned up my act at the end. And I think that's what matters. Anyways.
Yeah, you have to listen to...
Oh. Sorry, I didn't mean for that to play. Next race. And now I can get to the debate that I was looking at last time. You share React Andy. Right? Yeah, okay. It remembers what my browser window was supposed to be. That is not... Oh, what? What's going on? Like... Let's random and then alt-click. Having a little bit of trouble getting the alt-click to do what I want. Alright, there we go. Okay. Yes. That works, I think. Any bit. Alright. Nice. Back to the debate. What was going on? Jontron was waffling and Destiny was
to people and figure out what the problem
saying
is.
pretty
This is the problem.
Saying pretty unambiguously correct things. It's typically the case whenever somebody on the left or liberal is like debating a white nationalist. That yeah.
When you get condescending, people say "fuck you," I don't want to listen, and that's why you're seeing this big pushback. I didn't.
Half the people that
It does come from one side. Trump is a reaction.
Okay, here we
to
go.
the retarded identity politics of the last.
you're talking about reaction to identity politics, dog. Half the people that were tweeting at me in response to what you were saying to me were literal Nazis and white supremacists, like linking
Look,
me.
man, it's this guilt by association shit. Why don't you denounce all the communists in your movement?
What?
They killed 100 million people.
Wait,
what's wrong with communists?
communism?
Is that what you just said?
Wait, what does communism have to do with any of this?
Well, what do Nazis have to do with this?
The people, it's a political and race ideology. Communism is just an economic thing.
Oh, it's an economic.
That's true.
Okay, Nazis were
More or less
a movement in 1930s Germany. They have absolutely nothing to do with any of this. Americans are the ones who beat the Nazis. So I don't know why we're bringing Nazis into anything.
Because the people that were supporting you identify as neo-Nazis.
I don't care. Does someone replying to me mean that I endorse them? Have I ever tweeted?
Okay, here's the thing. Guilt by association in politics is absolutely a thing, right? If you make a point, right, and there are a number of neo-Nazis agreeing with you on the point that you've made, indicating that that is a neo-Nazi position, then yes, you have taken a neo-Nazi position, and that is a respect with which you align with Nazis, and that is like absolutely an indictment, I think, of your political beliefs, you know, and I think it should be considered as such. You never really want to be caught on the same side as fucking Nazis. Ah, you got me.
Anything of neo-Nazi ideology.
No, but I guess like the thing that bothers me is that at some point, if you find that you are in company with a ton of white supremacist, racist people, like at some point,
there we
you gotta
go.
wonder, like, fuck, what the fuck am I talking about? Like,
No, these are just slurs. White supremacist, racist. And by the way, I think
beautiful thing. This
Oh,
is where
oops.
we are at 2000.
It's if those are slurs, then why do you like have no problem saying them? I don't think that exactly holds up. That's like people who say insert term here is a slur, but then like they actually say the slur and they mean like, I don't know. Look, when people say stuff like Karen is a slur to try to get people to stop saying the word Karen, it's because they want to feel victimized about being white. They have a victim complex, and that's what Jontron is engaging in here. He wants to feel like he's the victim of like racial animus, and he's like trying to flip the dynamic of him being the person inspiring and driving that racial animus. He's trying to flip that on its head to say, no, actually, I, the white nationalist neo-Nazi, am the victim here. I think I've forwarded a little bit beyond where I want.
who beat the Nazis. So I don't
Neo-Nazi.
know we're bringing Nazis to force them. Have I ever tweeted anything of neo-Nazi ideology?
A half Iranian
Yes,
is talking
actually.
to me and feels like
No, these are just slurs. who Tom, Middle Eastern,
no,
whatever.
no. Hold on. No, I'm not trying to take the whiteness thing away from you. I think it's a beautiful thing. This is where we are. At 2017, a half Iranian is talking to me and feels like they belong to America. That's a good thing, dude. That's a positive thing.
As much as, like, Jontron's doing the Joker laugh, Destiny's right. This actually harps on the point that they were making earlier about Irish and Italians being heavily discriminated against in early 20th century America, and even mid 20th century America, is that whiteness as a concept, you know, like what groups of people get to be considered white, that expands over time. You know, it changes in certain ways. And now, like Destiny's saying, it can include somebody that is half Iranian. Like Jontron, you know, Jontron is considered white, even though like he said, his mom is Hungarian and his dad is Iranian. You know, although a lot of times what white supremacists will do is they'll sort of constrain the definition of who is white and who isn't a little bit more than the usual social definition. So in a white supremacist worldview, Jontron is not white, but in sort of common parlance, Jontron is white. And I think Destiny's trying to get at that like, this is a thing that changes over time, and it's a very arbitrary line to draw, and it's quite dumb to do that.
Because, like I said, 150 years ago, people identified as their European counterparts. Like, you're not American, you're German, you're Polish, right? It's these things. You're Italian, you're, you know, British. Like, but now we see ourselves as
British.
There's a ton of different white people in the United States that all see themselves as fucking white people. A lot of people couldn't even...
There's clearly people in America. If there is one, let me put it this way: if there is one American in America who doesn't see themselves, and they're a citizen, who doesn't see themselves as strictly American, we have ourselves a problem, in my opinion. Because
no, we don't. Like, you know, yeah, sure, in Jontron's opinion, but your opinion is fucking worthless on this. And if somebody is like, no, I don't really feel American despite being an American citizen, like, tough shit, skill issue, that's a, like, you know, that's a fucking, like, all the paperwork suggests otherwise. Like, you're an American. And if you have no problem functioning in civil society, then, you know, there's no problem there. It, like, doesn't really matter what people identify as, you know, when they are part of a given country, society, or whatever, and they're capable of living as such. And any criticism that white nationalists and reactionaries frequently levy about, like, people disturbing the national character, or like they're not integrating into our society, ultimately boils down to they don't speak my language and they don't look like me, and that makes me uncomfortable, which is a non-argument, right? And that's what Jontron is engaging in here, because, like, non-white Americans, even people who have American citizenship but don't fluently speak English, like my granddad. When my granddad was alive, he took a citizenship test, and of course he aced it. He's a very smart guy. But the whole time I knew him, his whole life, he spoke, I think, French and Arabic fluently, but not English. He could speak some English, but he didn't speak it fluently and wasn't super comfortable, so he would only really speak it around myself and, like, my family, because, like, he spoke it around people that knew English as their first language, but, like, he was just a little old man doing his thing, and I'm driving horribly. And there are many people in America who are just like that. They're just trying to do their own thing, whether or not they speak English, whether or not they look American, you know, whatever that means. And no, Jontron is wrong. That doesn't mean we have a problem. That's just somebody living their life.
And sure, if you want to move towards fixing that, that's fine. That's a great goal. I don't think a pure society is possible. Like,
that's not a thing to fix. That's not a problem. That's not something you fix. You would fix that by doing an ethnic cleansing, which poses a million fucking problems for everybody everywhere.
I don't think that's possible. But in terms of a demographic majority,
it's a good room.
I don't know that a nation can exist without one. This truly multicultural, every single person is...
No, a nation can exist without one. We just changed what that demographic definition is over time. If we still used the 20th or even 19th century conceptions of race and ethnicity that were present in America, America wouldn't have any single ethnic group be a majority. And even now, there are a lot of white supremacists that are pissing their goddamn pants over the fact that eventually white people will not be like an absolute majority. They'll only be a plurality. And, you know, despite all the rhetoric of the West has fallen, billions must die, America doesn't seem to be any worse off for it. You know, America is worse off than it was 30 years ago, but the ethnic makeup of the population is completely unrelated to that. It's as a result of... you know, other non-sequitur like policy decisions that have done that. In fact, immigration, if anything, has only made the country more economically powerful and united and all that.
It's a different like thing or race or religion. I don't really know if that's sustainable long term in a society.
Why not? What's so wrong about people being
well,
around
have you seen the last 4 years, my friend? I feel like people like you when they're talking.
Yes, the last 4 years when Obama was president and when we had black president, and I actually don't know what he's alluding to. It's probably just that.
Talking about this, they just pretend you gaslight. You pretend that the last 4 to 8 years didn't fucking happen.
I'm not gaslighting.
The West has fallen. Billions must die.
There are riots all over Europe and riots all over Sweden. No, the dog.
No, there aren't.
Do you think Sweden is falling apart right now under mass rioting and burning down of?
You ever heard of boiling the frog slowly? Doesn't notice.
What?
I mean, people say the same about Trump.
Dude, Jontron is going
authoritarian fascist government. I mean, you can make the same argument about anything. Like I said, I mean, like the facts back me up. That we are in an unprecedented era of world peace right now. But for some reason, people think
that is true, or rather, that was true at the time that they were having this argument. Jontron is completely going Joker mode and just doing, like I said, the West has fallen, billions must die. There's, like, no indication at that point that, like, any Western society was experiencing more social unrest than usual, right? Like, this was when the reactionism kind of started to rise in Europe as like, a political thing. But, like... when you say, like, oh, there's riots happening everywhere and whatever, no, there really aren't. Like, yeah, riots happen. That's a normal part of history. There are no more riots happening today than there were in, like, the 19th and 20th century, when there was a lot of political tension and unrest and stuff like that. In fact, if anything, there were, and I think are, fewer riots occurring today than there were at like comparable points in the 20th century, because things have grown a little bit more materially stable. None of what Jontron is saying holds up to the extent that you could even empirically test any of it against like what's actually happening. And most of it is just such gesturing and hand waving that you couldn't even really accurately pinpoint what he's talking about, if anything. That was really high air.
Why?
Because shit's falling apart.
But it's not. You're the one
it's not. Yeah.
See, Trump is the one gaslighting. This idea that crime is at a 45-year high, that ISIS represents a threat somehow to the Western world, these are gaslightings by fucking Trump. These things aren't true.
I will give you that. Perhaps it's a little bit on both sides there, but I still maintain what I say is true, and you know.
So like. When I look at society in America today, 200 years ago, men and women would not have been seen as being able to do equal things. That would be a disgusting idea. 150 years ago, you know, Italians, Polish people, Irishmen wouldn't have been considered even white people, let alone Americans, right?
I don't know that is just a myth. That's not true.
No, that's literally true.
White. I don't know where this thing that Italians and Irish weren't considered white. That's ridiculous. You seen the Irish are like the whitest people around. The hell, that's just a fucking myth. So I'm gonna take that from you.
Okay, here's a quick. I can't read the word. It's white N-word. Okay, I can't read this because we're gonna trouble on stream. Okay, this is what Irishmen were called.
I mean,
in the United States. I don't know if you didn't think this.
That's true. Both in the U.S. and the UK, they were extremely fucking racist against Irish people. And I don't 100% know why, because A lot of it was actually the old school, like, European style racism, where it's like against the ethnicity. Because obviously, they're the fucking palest people that you could imagine. They're white as white gets, basically.
Then a short Wikipedia article here.
Yeah, people in Destiny's chat are quoting the, like, no Irish need apply. There are literally signs. Like, in the early Jim Crow days, there were signs that would say, like, no blacks, no Irish.
I mean, what do you want? I mean, we're talking about an undisputed.
But they were still white. That's all I'm saying.
They
were
not
considered
They literally
white.
had signs in the United States that said
Irish
need not apply. These were less than humans. These people were treated horribly. They were not seen as Americans or even white people. They were called reverse Negros.
Maybe they were a bunch of dicks, huh?
Another tactical and. Wait, what? So we've got, okay. Oh man, you know what? This is the leap. This is the leap that happens for a lot of white supremacists. They go from denying that the racism ever exists to their real position, which is actually it was justified that these people were discriminated against, right? Because they obviously presented like a burden to society or some shit.
I don't think so. No.
I mean, okay.
So 200 years ago, women weren't seen as being able to achieve the same thing as men were. 150 years ago, Irishmen and Italian weren't seen as being white people. 100 years ago, black people weren't seen as... It seems like we're making...
Being Irish, or people not liking the Irish, or people not liking the Italians, doesn't make them not white. It just makes them not liked. Perhaps they had some traits that were undesirable. I hear the Italian mafia made the rounds. But look, that would have been a good argument to restrict Italian immigration then.
No. I've actually talked a little bit about how mobs develop and whatever. Like, what Jontron is saying here is that, like, oh, the presence of an Italian mob is necessarily a strike against Italians on an ethnic level, which is not true, not even remotely. The economic circumstances of America in that time period would have produced a mob even if there were no Italian immigrants in the country. Let's say, some broadly, massively different circumstances in history transpire such that Italians do not emigrate in large quantities to come to America, right? You would still have the mob because there are, like, I've explained that there are economic driving forces that lead people to organize themselves that way, where there are, like, gaps in governance by the state and whatever. It's like the poverty driving crime thing. It just so happens that Italians were discriminated against and were disproportionately poor. So you got a lot of Italian mob presence. But it wasn't like... It's not like this thing like, well, Italians have the mobster gene. Like, the fuck? It's like one step removed from saying that black people have the violence gene or something. Really dumb.
They've integrated into society. That's a good thing. Nobody in the United States of America, nobody in the U.S. sees an Italian.
Took them down.
Nobody in the U.S. looks at Italians and goes, "Oh, you're Italian. You're not a real American." Look at all of the integration we've achieved so far. Why would we stop at this point when we've come so much farther than we ever thought possible?
Because if it's not working, we should avert course.
How is it not working? What's not working?
It appears there is a lot of conflict. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last election, they pitted non-whites against whites, and they expected the non-whites to vote for Hillary, or...
Who's they, John? Who do you mean by they? I mean, like, obviously, I'm gesturing here that, like, when people say they, especially white nationalists, they mean the Jews, but, like, the real they here, if we want to say, like, whites and non-whites were sort of pitted against each other in the election, okay, fine. That's a dynamic that sometimes exists. The they that we're talking about in this instance is the right wing. Because, like I said last time I was reacting to this debate, the identity politics of the left come from the identity politics of the right, in that, like, the right makes their entire political existence about eliminating certain identities from the body politic, and so the left has to then step in and say, no, actually, you can't just eliminate an entire ethnic group of people based on their ethnicity or based on their sexuality or what have you, right? So that's left identity politics as a response to right identity politics. And I can't believe I did that while driving that section, avoiding all that.
You were some sort of race traitor. And I don't know if you want to ignore that fact, that's fine, but that's how it was.
Well, I mean, it's kind of based on their platforms. You got somebody like Trump saying that if you have Mexican parents, you can't be a federal judge. I mean, that's a pretty racially charged...
Did he say that? I don't know if he said that. I don't recall Trump ever saying anything explicitly racist. I recall that he said that he wanted it.
He literally said some like shit about Mexicans specifically, about Muslims specifically, you know. If he actually doesn't remember, he doesn't remember, but this really comes off as Jontron trying to excuse those things by saying, no, he didn't actually say that. Or at least for the purposes of this conversation, no, he didn't actually say that. Or something like that.
Illegal immigrants from Mexico who committed crimes to go back.
He also said that a lot of the people that Mexico sends over here, they send rapists and murderers, and maybe some are good people. I mean...
Was he wrong about the fact that we get a lot of crime from Mexico? Was he wrong about that?
For the most part,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, actually. The immigrants are the one group of people where the trend of like poor people committing a lot more crime kind of falters at least a little bit. Because immigrants are actually some of the most law-abiding citizens in the United States because there is constantly the threat of deportation. Obviously, if you have wealthy immigrants that come to the United States, they're obviously going to be committing less crime than very poor immigrants because, again, of that disparity. But even if immigrants are really poor, a lot of the statistics we have, at least to my recollection, show that they do not commit crime at high levels, not nearly to the levels of American citizens or especially native-born Americans. Again, because if they get into trouble with the law, if they have any encounters with the law or with the state, they risk being uprooted from their life in America and sent back to a country that in many cases they have no recollection, memory, or connection to. You know, because a lot of migrants come here when they're very young to get a better life for themselves.
I don't think that the majority of illegal immigrants are murderers or rapists. There's no data to back that up. So yes, he was wrong. Some of them are. Some of white people are murderers and racists. Should we deport all white people?
Yes, but those are people that they're part of, if you want to call, you know, they're part of the American family. We can't do anything about them. But why would we?
Bro, Fast and Furious arguments?
Why would we
because
do that?
Family?
It doesn't make sense.
We're not talking
but apparently
about
if you oppose this, you're racist.
Bro, mass deportations of migrants doesn't make sense either. None of what Jontron is saying makes any sense. Like, I've actually been extending insane levels of charitability to make anything that Jontron says make a modicum of sense for the purpose of, like, refuting it, right? Like, I'm steel-manning a lot of the things that Jontron is saying here on some level just to be able to offer a coherent counter-argument. But, like, the honest truth of it is a lot of the things that Jontron is saying in this debate are not coherent enough for me to, like, form that coherent counter-argument in the first place. In order to have a coherent counter-argument, you have to have a coherent argument, and that's not something that Jontron is really providing here. Then again, he is a white supremacist, so they're not exactly well known for their coherent arguments. Oh, ow. Sorry for bothering you. Offer promotion, channels, viewers, followers, chatbots, etc. No. Just I have to take a second to read that name. Stagecom? Distorted Stagecom. Thanks for the offer, I guess, but my answer is no, and I have a no soliciting policy in my chat. Otherwise, I'm pretty lenient. Please do not. Please don't ask again. Respectfully, no thank you. In a moment, I'll get back to this debate. There we go.
We're not talking about importing crime. The fact that you have importing crime as synonymous with Mexicans coming to the United States is a little telling, don't you think?
If you are a real chatter, though, welcome to chat. I have to section in that.
If you oppose this, you're racist.
We're not talking about importing crime. The fact that you have importing crime as synonymous with Mexicans coming to the United States is a little telling, don't you think?
It has nothing to do with Mexicans.
I think so,
If a bunch of Hungarians came in here committing crime, I would say the fucking same thing, man.
Okay, you saying that it has nothing to do with them being Mexicans, then why
in
is
both
it so
cases that's
important
not
that
happening.
whites remain the majority in the United States? What is it about being white that's so important?
Look, I'm actually not making the argument that whites should remain the majority in the United States. I'm simply arguing that it's clear that whites are not allowed to speak up against their demographic oblivion. I mean,
it's not oblivion. There is no oblivion.
What?
Nobody is walking around killing all the white people.
Says you.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
did I miss the
What?
stories where all of these white people are being killed in hordes by Mexicans and black people?
They're not being killed, man, but they're being displaced. I mean, if you...
What do you mean by displaced?
You are the same guy...
Dude, what? I'm gonna let Destiny go here. Destiny is employing the tried and true tactic of just asking incredibly basic clarifying questions, because that is all that's necessary for a white nationalist to completely fall apart.
Guy who says that Europeans displace the Native Americans. That's your argument. That's your go-to argument. Oh, you're not a Native American, then you can never be a true American. But apparently, when other people do it to white Americans, it's okay, because fuck.
What? I think Jontron is projecting really hard here. Nobody's trying to gatekeep what it means to be American, except for Jontron in this instance.
White people.
Wait,
it's obvious what you're saying.
No, my original point was that I think it's strange that so many people identify as American when your family typically immigrated from another country. I never spoke to whether or not...
Everybody's from fucking somewhere, man. It doesn't make...
Yeah, and that's crazy. Jontron just gave probably the strongest defeater for all of his arguments. Everyone's from somewhere, man. Yeah.
It doesn't make these things not real. Like,
well, sure, but I kind of agree
with
what you're
British
saying.
people immigrated onto the island at one point before there was anything there. I mean, what is your point?
You're nothing. That's good. You made my point for me. I agree that where you're from doesn't define who you are. That anybody can go to a country and be part of that country. So then why are we so worried about white?
Here, you know what? This is one of the things I meant when I said that fascism today is significantly to the left of fascism in the 1920s and 30s. Jontron has to allude to these kind of progressive values. Or, I mean, I act as if I'm saying this as if he's like fully cognizant of the points he's making, which I think he's not entirely. But, you know, the belief that, like, oh, of course, everybody's from somewhere. Everybody's got to get by. You can go to any country you want and make it there if you're willing to, you know, become a part of the family and whatever. That is a very new progressive idea, and I think it's a good one. And in fact, it's like, it has neutered a lot of fascist movements, because in the 1920s and 30s, they would have been like, no, all people from this place are bad, and they like would have the mask dropped right off the bat. And because that social norm was there, that they were kind of, it was more acceptable to just do that. You know, you wouldn't exactly have to dance around that opinion very much. Nowadays, you actually do, because it's like, it's actually fucking insane to say some shit like that. That's just one example with fascism today being like impacted by the socially progressive movements of the 20th and 21st centuries. That you know, even when your position is more or less the same as Nazis from the 1930s, 1940s, you still have to allude to the progressive values of American inclusivity. And saying like, hey, you know, American dream, man, anybody can come to America and make it big. That's what makes us America, and all that stuff. That's what makes us so great, you know. I just thought that was interesting. It's like the history of like a lot of political movements is ultimately the history of those kinds of rhetorical political battles. And you know, when the dust settles, it's like the social status quo has shifted a little bit to the left each time. Like every revolution, every mass movement, all of that has resulted, you know, that has been successful, has resulted in society moving a little bit more to the left, to such an extent that before you would have people literally like wanting to murder somebody who was from a neighboring country. But nowadays, you know, even the most extreme fascists, in order to have any sort of political efficacy, will have to sort of gesture at like, oh, you know, anybody can make it here as long as you're willing to be part of the family, you know, like. You know, they basically have to say we're not racist. They have to preface a lot of the things they say with we're not racist. They can't just come out with it right away. Anyways, back to it.
Placement.
Because it's real. Do you want me to send you a link? Would you here?
What does white displacement mean?
Here, have a look at this chart here. That's what it looks like. You can show that on the stream if you'd like to. They're going to be, I mean, at this rate, you know, the whites would be a minority by 2042.
I somehow ran away with that race.
Why does it matter if a certain skin color is a minority?
Because you and people of your ilk would freak out had the situation been flipped. Had the situation been...
No, actually, I don't think we would have. Well, first I want to address, like, the reason that right-wingers are so terrified of white people becoming a minority is because of the unspeakable fucking things they do to minorities or want to do to minorities that they are afraid would be done to them as the racial, like, dominant group. Little do they know, everybody isn't like them. Right-wingers believe this weird thing about the world, that nobody actually believes anything. And that everybody is just as bad as everybody else. It's funnily enough, it's a very liberal way of thinking. It's a sort of moral realism that liberals also engage in. But from the other end, liberals believing that everybody believes fundamentally in the same things that they do, which is also not true. But in this case, they believe that, like, oh, everybody is just as evil as us, and our evil manifests in the form of us repressing minorities. So if we become a minority, our racial group becomes a minority, they, the nebulous they, oftentimes meaning the Jews, will do the same stuff to us that we've been doing to minorities for however long. But me, the based moral anti-realist, knows that this is not the case. People do believe stuff. Sometimes that stuff happens to be quite different. Not everybody is an evil bitch. That's, in fact, a very small minority of the population. And there's no evidence at all to suggest that, like, demographic changes results in even more oppression or like, results in the... I don't know, previous racial power group being oppressed or something. What Jontron is talking about here is not real. He's shadowboxing. Because he's afraid that white people will be treated as badly as he wants black people to be treated. And you know, immigrants and stuff. Which, again, I cannot stress enough, does not happen. It will not happen. Yeah.
Whites colonizing a part of... When the Chinese did
Wait,
it to
we're
Tibet.
not colonizing anything. These are people legally immigrating,
okay,
legally
so
belonging.
why when the Chinese, you know, were trying to colonize Tibet,
this is not
you know, trying to go into Tibet, why was that, you know, a save Tibet situation? But when
I don't know anything. I don't know about.
Well, because this isn't a colonial project. What Jontron is talking about here, mass migratory movements and colonial projects are very, very different political things. You know, a mass migratory movement is just that. It's people moving around, oftentimes at the very, like, gritted teeth of various states. States tend to not like mass migratory movements very much because they're logistically, you know, difficult to process, a lot of people to handle and whatever. That's just, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, at the end of the day, they're just people trying to go from point A to point B, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But a colonial project is explicitly a project of economic domination, and the population transfer in such large quantities, a, like, massive movement of population is not really necessary for a colonial project. And if it does happen, it's a very different kind of, like, population movement or transfer or whatever than exists with a mass migratory movement. You know, and again, it would, you know, economic domination, it looks very different. The kind of people that would be moving and settling in a colonial project would be expats. There we go. That's the word I was searching for. Which would be, like, disproportionately much wealthier and have a lot more connections and whatever. And they wouldn't be going there really to live there. They would always have, like, that home to go back to in their original country. The more I talk about it, the more complicated it gets. So you can think of the difference between a colonial project and a mass migratory movement as the difference between expats and migrants. Because we still see this today. Like, migrants are treated like shit, and then nobody talks about expats, which are objectively worse. You know, migrants are almost exclusively a benefit to society, to the societies they move to, and expats are... I don't know a lot about expats, but, you know, sometimes it's a wash, sometimes it's benefit, sometimes it's not, but there's like a much more ethically questionable underlying relationship between countries there. Anyways. You know, I feel like I shouldn't have really justified that with the response. I think it's pretty fucking evident that, like, a wave of immigration to a country is not a fucking colonial project. Like, there's this vast rift between the two.
About the situation.
And hey, look, I just also remember, this is the fucking elephant in the room staring me in the face. In an immigration wave, nobody gets displaced. The problem, like the problem that nation states deal with when a lot of immigrants come in, the thing that makes it difficult is that nobody's getting displaced. So a lot of times immigrants don't really have anywhere to go. You know, there has to be new housing built or something like that. Nobody's getting displaced or evicted from their fucking house or whatever, which does happen in colonial projects. It doesn't happen with immigration.
Tibet and China. I'm talking about the United States of America.
That was a lot of words.
Okay, well,
sorry.
I'm using
leftist meme.
I'm using a metaphor. What do you call it? Allegory, metaphor,
analogy.
And I mean, sorry, jeez, I'm dumb. I'm using an analogy to try to, you know, give a parallel situation so you can see the hypocrisy.
Wait, what is the hypocrisy? I don't care about other countries' standards. I'm not concerned with them. There is no hypocrisy between saying Japan can be racist and America can't, because I'm American and I have my American beliefs and ideas. Japan has other beliefs and ideas. I understand that. I would never go to Japan and tell them to change the way their country works. It's their country.
Okay, let me ask you something.
I would, you see, because I'm not a fucking cultural relativist. I believe that the same things that are shitty in America are also shitty in Japan. Based moral, anti-realist, but not relativist take. There we go.
Do you consider the European colonization of Africa to be a bad thing?
Yeah, that's a very, very complicated...
It's only complicated because it's whites.
No, it's not. It's really complicated because in a lot of ways Africa's been exploited by different imperialist countries, and in other ways Africa has grown a lot in different economies because of their trade with these countries. Like, that's a really, really complicated question. Africa's still lagging behind a lot of the world for a lot of different reasons, but they have been catching up and making great progress over the past 20 years. Like, it has nothing to do with skin color or white.
I think Destiny makes this more complicated than it needs to be. When he answers this, you can just say, like, yeah, you know, colonization was a bad thing for Africa and whatever, even though there have been, you know, some benefits to that effect, right? You can say, like, yeah, it was, in some ways it benefited Africa, in some ways it was really, really fucking detrimental, but broadly it was like a very exploitative thing. Although this is kind of a rhetorical nitpick, I do generally see what he's going for here, I think.
People, I mean, you could look at it through that paradigm if you want, but that's a really complicated issue.
I'm just saying, if white people go to South Africa, they colonize there, you know, it's the white people encroaching on the Africans' land, and they should give it back. But
we're not talking about colonizing or imperializing people. We're just talking about immigration in the United States,
what do you call a large number of people from one specific place coming in, setting up their own ethnic enclaves, and then waving their own flag inside of our nation? What would you call
setting
that?
up your own ethnic enclaves and waving your own flag? I'm pretty sure we have a lot of Mexicans that come to the United States that are living in the United States that wave American flags and are proud to be American. Like,
yes, of course there are some, but not.
It's actually quite a lot of them. But yeah, you know, what Jontron is saying here, this is a more direct version of that argument he was making earlier. People don't set up ethnic enclaves, they just sort of happen. And a lot of times they happen because of racism and stigmatization out of the broader society that they've just moved into and whatever. Like, the reason ethnic enclaves exist is because of racists like Jontron. And not because of immigrants just kind of do that. there would still be some tendency, because adjusting towards a new society is difficult, right? Like, obviously, I don't want to undersell that or anything. There would still be, even in the absence of any structural or individual racism and whatever, there would be some tendency for ethnic minorities to form more tight-knit, like, groups or enclave-esque communities, right? Just because it's like it's a reminder of like, oh, this is familiar, right? But it would be a lot more like, you would see a lot larger and a lot quicker integration into the sort of homogenized normal than you would if you were focusing on they're not integrating and shit like that. And likewise, the definition of normal would be a lot more accommodating to people who still kind of wanted to do things like they did at home, because there's not the weird nationalistic obsession with you have to live, like you have to be different all of a sudden. You know what I mean? It's not, but yeah, all that to say, it's not like this active thing that happens. They don't set up enclaves. And again, they don't have, like, colonial projects are conducted by states. Mass migratory movements are not conducted by states.
There are also large swaths of them who don't feel that way, who want to break parts of America off back into Mexico. So what would you say to those?
What?
Okay, so just to put your argument on paper, you think that
citation needed.
Rape, murder, and theft, leaving and fleeing Mexico to come to the United States, whose ultimate goal is to secede part of the United States back to the place that they fled from.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
You think that there are people that risk rape, murder, and theft to try to get their families from Mexico to the United States so that ultimately they could get back to the United States just to secede part of it to Mexico. They want to break it off and go back to the land that they...
Yeah, true.
Man, I'm not going to
Yeah, Destiny makes a good point there. Most of the migrants that come to America explicitly want to come to America. You know, they want to leave the home country behind. As painful as that might be for a lot of people, because it might be like the only home they've ever known, it's just like, economically things get so bad that people kind of have to leave.
Speculate on why they did what. All I know is what they are doing. And
whoa! You just speculated, though. You said that they wanted
I didn't speculate.
You said they wanted to come here and break off. You know, where is these movements of Mexicans trying to get Texas to go back to Mexico? What?
When you have these illegals coming up and getting so bold to say, "Try deporting me, Trump," you know, that's a sign of a problem. By the way, it's inarguable that the locations from where people have immigrated, it has changed. Up until, I believe it was 1965, it was all Europeans, and now most of it is from Mexico. And by the way, you know, they're even going into, I believe, the African Americans areas and pushing them out too. So it's not just white Americans that are affected by this kind of thing.
Most of what Jontron is saying here, I could refute it long form like I've been doing, but I think a big fat citation needed is all I need. So I'll just leave it at that.
I don't understand this is what I'm trying to get back to the original question. What do you mean by affected? What's so bad about a certain type of people immigrating to a country? Like, back to the original question, why does it matter if white people become the minority in the United States? Why is that a big deal?
Man, come on. Come on, man. I mean, look, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. That's how people work. That's how all
No, it's not. That's not true. Maybe
No.
that's how racists work. This is where the word comes from. Well, I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, here's that moral like realism that I mentioned earlier. That like Jontron and other white supremacists all believe that everybody in the world is just as shiftless and evil as they are. But that's not the case. That's not how shit works. Hello. Ah, goddamn. I did not mean to do that. Oh no! Rip. I'll just use this here. God, the mirror mode has really been killing me.
I'm trying to get you to tell me what, because that's all I can go on right now, because you're not giving me more. I'm asking you, why does it matter if white people are the minority in the United States? And you keep like kind of laughing and go like, well, is it because brown people are worse than white people?
No, of course it's not because brown people are worse. It's a matter of integration. If they immigrate, they need to integrate. But also, we don't need to take immigrants from incompatible places. It doesn't make any sense.
But that's the beautiful thing about America, dog. There is no incompatible place that people can't come
Oh
from.
my god, man. Okay, well, I mean, if that's...
yeah, Destiny's right. Destiny's
correct.
We're
the most diverse country on the planet, dude. Like, you can't argue with that. We're also arguably the most successful country on the planet, at least in terms of overall size of the economy, although we definitely have problems. We are definitely the most influential country on the planet. I mean, we are the most diverse country on the planet. Like, these are inarguable. Why are you laughing? Like, oh, well, are we really? Like, no, it's like, you're acting like we're like 99% majority whites, and now we've got like a little bit bogging us down. Like, that's absolutely not true. Like,
the country was something like 92% white in 1950. It's changed now. It's about 60% non-Hispanic white, I believe. These are epic demographic changes, unlike what I don't know if it's ever been seen in history. Maybe in some invasion in the 1500s. But look, these people see themselves.
By the way, it's pretty telling that Jontron immediately goes to like, oh, we haven't seen this since the 1500s, when the world is very different than the 1500s. Because I think he's operating very much on like insanely antiquated politics here. Not to say that like a mass migratory movement was bad in the 1500s and isn't now. It's in both times mass migratory movements are morally neutral. They're just a thing that happens. But Jontron is like, he's doing the fascist thing of like idealizing an imagined point in the past to go back to where America was all white. Because that's what he's saying here. He's saying that it was better when America was almost exclusively white and for white people. And it's bad that America is now ethnically and racially diverse, even though there's no evidence for anything that he's saying here. And a lot of it is just... They don't want you to have a white America. The West has fallen. Billions must die, etc., etc. That being said, though, I'm at about 31 minutes.
Mexican. I don't know that they come here and the soil magically turns them into Thomas Jefferson's direct descendant. So why is it that...
yeah, okay, 31 minutes. I think that's good. I'm going to actually... I think I'm going to end stream now. Thank you for tuning in, anybody who tuned in. Remember, no soliciting, please. I'm glad that guy only did it the once. But I'll be back soon. I don't know when that is. I was really tired today. I can tell you probably why I'm tired. Next time I'll tell that story. Because some shit happened yesterday that I unfortunately forgot to talk about this stream. Poor Gore. I'll see if anybody's live right now, but if they're not, I'll just end stream and that'll be that. Denims is live, but I remember they didn't allow ratings, so... Yeah, no, I think I'm just gonna end stream. You can check my shit out on the VODs page or on the live stream archives playlist on YouTube. That's where I upload all my stuff. All of my live streams are available as unlisted videos, but the playlist is public, so you can find it on my channel. See you next time.